The craziest scandal in League of Legends just got crazier. We've got thousands of dollars in fines, perma-bans from Riot Esports events, allegations of verbal and physical abuse, allegations of forgery, and of course, shady contracts. This story is getting wilder by the minute, and we've got a lot of ground to cover, so buckle up. Alright, so in case you missed our last two videos about this, let's do a quick recap. Griffin is a League of Legends team in the LCK, Korea's pro league. They've had a little bit of a Cinderella run over the last few years where they started in Challenger and worked their way all the way up to Worlds this year, where they placed 5th, 8th. But right before Worlds, Griffin's coach, cvMax, abruptly left the team, which started an entire shitstorm. Two Griffin players said that cvMax was lying about Griffin on his stream. cvMax responded by saying that Cho, the manager of Griffin, banned him from streaming while he was on the team to prevent him from getting his name out there, and accused cvMax of just getting lucky and saying that he had nothing to do with Griffin's successes. On top of that, allegations began to surface that Cho may have strong-armed a player on Griffin, Kanavi, into signing an unfavorable contract. Still 8, Griffin's parent company, put out an apology, and Cho resigned. But then Cho did an interview where he threw a bunch of allegations back onto cvMax. Then some senators got involved, and Riot Korea began investigating. Alright, is that everything? That brings us to the present, where we have a ton of new developments in this story. I honestly can't pick which of these is the absolute craziest, so let's just run through them all chronologically. First, Riot Korea put out a competitive ruling on Griffin, and the beginning of it is that they've fined Griffin about $85,000 US. They've also indefinitely banned both Cho and cvMax from all Riot-sanctioned League of Legends events. Their careers in League are basically over. In a translation from Horizon's Kevin Kim, Riot writes that Cho behaved improperly during the whole situation with Kanavi. For a quick refresher, the whole issue with Kanavi was that he was forced by Griffin, allegedly, to sign a long-term contract in order to secure a higher transfer fee for the org when he was loaned to a Chinese team called JDG. Cho alleged that Kanavi participated in tampering, which Riot eventually said, no he didn't. That is super complicated, but basically, Kanavi didn't fuck up. The problem is, Cho absolutely did.
You done fucked up, you know that, don't you?
See, according to that translation, Riot found that Cho is guilty of strong-arming Kanavi into signing an unfavorable contract. Cho made Kanavi, a minor, process his own player transfer and pressured him unfairly, presumably in reference to getting a better transfer fee when he was loaned out to JDG. Riot also stated that Cho added a clause to Kanavi's contract that excluded his time on loan to JDG as part of the contract period, which that would effectively trap him on Griffin for way longer than he expected to when he signed the contract. Meanwhile, for cvMax, Riot wrote in their decision that they found evidence and instances of cvMax verbally and physically abusing players on Griffin. And personally, just as an aside, that seems like a pretty good reason to ban someone. If it's true, that is. Griffin is also being fined, as I already mentioned, but that's because Riot found that there were people in higher up positions in Griffin who either knew about the situation, didn't stop it, or otherwise helped Cho make it happen. They also wrote that if they find Griffin doing anything like this again, they could accrue further penalties, up to and including losing their spot in the LCK. That's some wild stuff. But it's only the tip of the iceberg. Korean Senator Tae-kyung-ha, who was looking into this whole situation, released a statement calling the whole thing abhorrent. Senator Ha said that Riot's decision to punish cvMax could be against a Korean law designed to protect whistleblowers. The law comes with up to 3 years of jail time for anybody who breaks it. The way that Senator Ha sees it, cvMax's courage to speak out against Griffin is admirable, and he shouldn't be punished for it. Notably, nothing in the statement mentioned anything about the allegations of verbal or physical abuse, just the allegations of corruption going on in Griffin. Senator Ha also spoke in a separate article about what he found out when he looked into the situation regarding Kanavi's contract. Allegedly, according to some translations of an article published by Invictus Korea, Griffin used a fraudulent contract to trick Kanavi. Unfortunately, I don't have a really solid translation of that article that I really trust right now, but I want to say that those allegations are extremely serious. Because not only is Senator Ha alleging that Griffin broke the law, but also that they horribly mistreated a minor. Something that I want to note here that our translator told us is that Senator Ha is really famous for being a get shit done kind of guy. Our translator told us that while other politicians take a long time passing something or investigating something, Senator Ha has a long record of approaching difficult topics and not being afraid to blow things up. Anyway, within this, allegedly, Senator Ha is saying that Griffin forged legal documents. And honestly, that to me is the craziest part of this whole story. So I'm really sorry I can't go further into depth about it. I just need a better translation. and you can be sure that we're working on it, and we'll let you know more about that as soon as we understand it ourselves. Anyway, after Riot's announcement, cvMax took to Twitch and talked about a conversation he had with a Riot Korea employee. On his stream, cvMax alleged that the Riot employee said that cvMax told a player, quote, "do whatever the fuck pleases you," and that constitutes verbal abuse. Our translator specifically noted that instead of the word fuck, he really said do whatever your dick tells you to do, but it basically means the same thing once you translate it. cvMax goes on to allege that he never used that word, the one that's either dick or fuck, and says that Riot won't let him listen to the recordings they allege that they have of him verbally abusing players. Then, Still 8 made a statement on their website about literally everything up to this point. In it, they claim that Kanavi transferred to JDG of his own free will, that he was never threatened into signing the contract, that Griffin didn't do any document forging, and that Still 8 are going to be taking legal action against cvMax. And then, Invin published an article in which they interviewed several players who are on Griffin who alleged that they were verbally and physically abused by cvMax. In the interview, Griffin coach Chaos says that he saw cvMax throw his notebook and shake players by the collar. Sword, one of the players on Griffin, also says, quote, "he also said I'm disgusting and that he can't handle me. He said that if we lose because of me, he'd follow me to the end of the world to get revenge, or that he'd kill me." Another player, Tarzan, says that he wasn't personally the victim of any physical or verbal abuse, but that he did witness cvMax insult other players, calling them assholes and saying they, quote, "fucking suck." And rather, another player alleges that cvMax pinched another player so hard it left a bruise. That player, by the way, was Chovy. Rather also alleges that after a scrim 2 years ago, cvMax told one player, quote, "if I was a teammate in that game, I would have called you a bitch whose mom died." That's fucking crazy, and I don't even really know what that means. Anyway, there is a lot more to that interview, and I really recommend reading it if you want to know more about the whole situation. But the summary is, a lot of players and the coach of Griffin are backing up the allegations of verbal and physical abuse that Riot put out. Now, as a counterpoint, allegedly that bitch whose mom died insult was directed at Newt, who was Griffin's support player at the time. Newt has since gone on cvMax's stream to say that he was okay with being called that and he doesn't view it as verbal abuse. And to follow that out, some people have said that this kind of coaching style isn't all that unusual in Korea. Recently retired player Sang-yoon went on his stream and said that if this is a ban-worthy offense, pretty much every coach he's ever had would be banned. On top of that, former League of Legends caster and personality Monte Cristo tweeted that he'd heard some very similar things about the Korean coaching style as well. Now, just because it's the style in the region doesn't really make it okay. Following the publication of that interview, cvMax took to Twitch again to refute some of those players' claims. We have a translation of that too, so let's break it down. First, cvMax said that Chovy, Doran, and Newt all contacted him after the news broke. At the time that the alleged abuse occurred, cvMax says that all three of those players, whom he says he directed the most abuse towards, all consented to his coaching style. Additionally, cvMax alleges that even those players' parents consented to that coaching style. And he alleges that both the players and parents have thanked him for helping them improve, and the players have asked that their cases not be brought up in this dispute. Anyway, cvMax says that Tarzan's claims don't make sense to him, because cvMax alleges that Tarzan actually asked for harsher coaching himself. cvMax shows what he alleges was a text conversation he had with Tarzan, in which Tarzan asked for, quote, spicier coaching after performing poorly in scrims. According to cvMax, this alleged conversation with Tarzan happened in the postseason break but before Worlds, and the way cvMax sees it, it basically contradicts all of Tarzan's claims. Anyway, that basically does it for the whole cvMax versus the players thing, but just in case you forgot about the whole thing about Kanavi and corruption, Senator Ha released the entire contract in full, and we have a partial translation. And guess what? The contract has a few shady clauses, surprising absolutely no one who's been in esports for more than 4 days. The first weird clause in the contract is that if a player is sick or injured and has to be hospitalized for 30 days or more, they can be fired by Griffin for no other reason and with no warning. And crazier, if they're fired for that reason, they're not allowed to join another team for 12 months. The contract also states that a player can be fired at any time with no warning if their play is found to be lacking. If the team can't get in contact with the player, that is of course another reason to be fired, on top of a fine, and their salary will be taken away. And of course, it also states that if the player uses the Griffin IP after they leave the team in any way to make money, Griffin gets to claim all of the profits. That's a lot of shady stuff, and apparently, we're only scratching the surface. I know that this started as a pretty crazy story, but this has ballooned into probably the most incredible scandal in esports history at this point. Colin already told you about how this could impact the way that Korean League of Legends contracts or esports contracts in general are written from now on. But now, I think it could do even more. We've got serious criminal lawsuits, allegations of physical and verbal abuse, and now a minor being mistreated. This is fucked. All right, let's do a quick recap here just to wrap everything up, if we possibly can in less than like 10 minutes. cvMax and Cho are both banned. cvMax because he allegedly physically and verbally abused players. cvMax says that that's not quite what happened, that he apologized or that it wasn't necessarily verbal abuse or physical abuse, but Riot won't show him the tapes. The players on Griffin said that it actually happened. cvMax says that some players asked for that kind of coaching, and many others in the community say that that's just the style of coaching in Korea. Meanwhile, in the case of Cho, he was banned because of some shady contract stuff with Kanavi. The senator looking into that says that, yeah, it's about as shady as you expect, and even more shady than we could possibly imagine. Up to and including strong-arming a minor into signing an unfavorable contract and forging documents in order to make him do it. All right, that is a lot. But there's gonna be even more ground to cover. I'm sure something crazy is gonna happen before we even publish this video. So you can be sure we're gonna look into this even more, and as soon as we know something, you will too.
Yeah. I don't know if this is gonna be hard, but when you're talking, you try not to lean this way.
Okay.
Yeah, just because like the exit sign.
I honestly don't think the exit sign is that big a deal. I'm gonna be real. It literally doesn't matter, dude. If people see that there's an exit sign, they know that we have fire safety like standards here. Hey guys, there's an exit sign over there. Or it's the one like way back there, right? Next to the door? Yeah, it's fine. It's just, we have an exit sign. We have to have them. I'm sorry if you have to see them every time I move my head like an idiot, but like I move my head like an idiot and then the exit sign's gonna be there. Andrew wants me to apologize to you. All right, is that okay for you, Andrew? My apology to the fans?
It's up to them.
That's true. I hope you guys can accept this apology. Yeah.